Hi, I'm Barbara Morrow. Welcome to the Northshire Bookstore's Author Talk. We are so delighted to have with us today Theresa Rebeck. Theresa is a part-time Dorset resident, and I want to say, Theresa, that you are something of a Renaissance woman. Theresa writes plays, she writes novels, she writes TV shows. She's just finished directing a play, a movie, and she is working all the time on her writing. And I'm going to be talking to Theresa today about the different genres that she works in. And I'd like to start maybe with your novel that has just come out, and it is called I'm Glad About You. And just before you get to talk about this novel, I want to mention that Theresa will be here at the Northshire Bookstore, and I'm about to give you the date.
It's July 8th.
Thank you.
But I don't know what time. I think
Friday, July 8th. Thank you, at 7 o'clock. Theresa, tell us about your new novel.
I've been working on it quite a long time. It's sort of I had a lot. I had written 2 other novels, and because I started as a playwright, the first 2 novels are written in first person because that was a sort of more natural idiom for me. And this one I felt like really needed to be told in third person narrator, and it took me a while to figure out what that was. And then I had a couple of other things that interfere with it. You know, I started working on some television projects that it took its time. And it's about 2 people who are in love with each other before the novel begins, but have broken up. And then there's a sense that they can't let go of each other even as they move forward in time, and so their paths cross. And it's very much about they start in the Midwest, and one of them stays in the Midwest. Like half the novel takes place in Cincinnati, and the other half takes place on the East Coast, and some in Los Angeles, because our female protagonist, Allison, can't stay put. She's an actress, and so there's a little bit of the Sister Carrie story about her, where she keeps rising in the culture, and becoming less and less grounded, while the love of her youth stays in one place and becomes more and more interior. So there's a kind of split self that emerges, and the book talks about that, and it also talks about how America doesn't talk to itself anymore. And it's funny. It is funny. I know I didn't make it sound funny, but it is pretty funny.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you was, what was the inspiration for this particular novel? It doesn't sound like it was autobiographical at all.
No, I did grow up in Cincinnati, I live in New York, and so that aspect of it is autobiographical. But it's more it's more like the ground that was seeded is in that sense it's an autobiographical book.
About a woman who
couldn't stay put in the Midwest, and went looking for something. I mean, she's an actress, so there's aspects of the showbiz culture that also I know that world well.
Yes.
And so the worlds are places I've inhabited, certainly.
Okay, interesting. Well, we'll look forward to having you come talk more about it on July 8th here at the bookstore. You are best known as a playwright, and you have written many, many different plays. And I've been told that you are one of the 10 most produced playwrights in the country. And that is no small feat for anyone, much less a woman. You are going to be, one of your plays is going to be produced at the Dorset Theatre Festival this summer. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, it's a world premiere. Everyone acts like the world premieres are a big deal, and they kind of are. because it means the thing's never been seen anywhere before, and there's a kind of freshness and excitement about it. And we've spent the last month really looking at the script and making sure it's ready to go, you know, into rehearsal. And I wrote it several years ago, or I started drafting it. It's an adaptation of William Congreve's The Way of the World. And actually, I had a play on Broadway like 5 years ago called Seminar that starred Alan Rickman, who's a good friend of mine. And he told me at one point, he decided that I was actually a restoration playwright, and that I should go look at those restoration plays and adapt them for a contemporary world, because there's such a similarity in the worlds. Or, you know, he sort of presented that to me as something he knew in his bones. And so I went and looked at, several plays. He actually told me to look at something called The Relapse. And I couldn't make it through it. I was very confused by it, but I'd always been sort of fascinated by The Way of the World. And so, which is a pretty mean play. Very funny, very mean, and about a time in England. Well, it's a time it was the whole point. It describes a world of culture and money and people being very, very cruel to each other, and there's a lot of gossip about who's in love with who, and there's there's an heiress who everybody kind of wants to grab her because she's got so much money, but then there's like a rake who's fallen in love with her, or is he just after her money? That's essentially and then there's this figure who mostly people know about, named Lady Wishfort. She's a sort of famous caricature of the time, and she's a figure of enormous, they mock her throughout the whole play and then humiliate her at the end. And I was sort of interested in how contemporary it did feel. It feels sort of like watching television when you read it, like watching those Kardashian shows. And I started thinking about, I have spent some time in the Hamptons, and it feels very, very similar. A world where there's a sort of relentless, determined shallowness, a gossip, perverse fascination with gossip and money.
So this is a modern version of that play.
So I took that original play and I put it and it's set in the Hamptons. And I basically looked at the structure of the play and the story itself, and just recreated it for contemporary players. And it's very, very funny. And we have one of the great American stage actresses playing the Lady Wishfort character, Christine Nielsen. She's someone who people might know from New York theater, because she's very, very, she works a lot. She's very gifted. The last thing that she did that she got a Tony nomination for was the Sasha, Masha, Vanya, and Spike. She was in the original cast of that. She did it at Lincoln Center. She did it on Broadway. She did it, I think, in London and Los Angeles. She's truly a great actress and a great comedic actress, and it's a
so we'll look
privilege
forward
to have her. Yeah.
Just so our audience knows, The Way of the World, which is the name of...
yes, it's the name of my play, too.
The name of your play will be at the Dorset Theatre Festival from July 28th to August 13th. And it sounds absolutely wonderful. You've had many other plays produced at Dorset, yes?
Yes. This is the first one I've directed myself.
Okay.
But I have been directing in the last several years. But we did The Scene here a couple of seasons ago with Tim Daly.
Yeah.
And several years ago we did The Novelist with Michael Christopher. And then we also did Mauritius, which was another one of my plays that was on Broadway that was in there. I don't know
How many plays have you written?
I've written a lot of plays.
A lot of plays.
I Honestly, I was actually just counting them up the other day because every now and then you get a little curious yourself. And I think there's probably around 25, between 25 and 30.
25?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot. So that...
I know that I stopped writing them for a while because I have to say, somebody recently said to me, there's a theory that people are creative because otherwise they get bored. And I thought, that's kind of a little bit my it's not a problem, it's just like a reality that sometimes if I don't have something that I'm working on or thinking about, my brain starts to attack me. Do you know what I mean? It's got nothing better to do, so it turns on me. So it's very important to me to have something that, like a story or something that I'm working on that I can work through. And the other thing that has turned out to be true for me over the years is that it's come to be a way of knowing. It's a deep way of understanding something. So generally, if I get really curious about something, the way I come to know it is to start to write about it. And I can't always say what it is that makes me curious, and I can't also always be terribly methodical about how I'm going to approach the subject. When I worked in television, I had some problems with like the power structure because so many, there are these executives and I don't know, people in offices, and they always want you to write treatments. I've gotten rather good at it, but they ask you to write these treatments, and then they want to sit around and talk. So they want you to basically tell them what you're going to write before you write it. Mm-hmm. That's the way their system works. And I always was like this, but I finally started being able to articulate. I don't know what I'm going to write until I am in the middle of it, and then I can be much more clear about it. But
so how do you decide what medium you're going to write about in?
That's sort of intuitive. That's interesting. It's slightly intuitive, and it's also it's kind of an organic moment where you just go, oh, it's time to. It feels a little like a dance with my unconscious mind, and also I have to say, sometimes I feel like there are two people here. There's me. I'm the person who presents to the world and can be in discussion with you, and then there's the writer person, who will not always do what I tell her to do. So that's very interesting. And if you piss her off, she won't do it at all. So sometimes. And when I'm working in Hollywood, which I have done, and which I write about to great hilarious effect in this book, I have to say, that there's a kind of, they don't really understand writers, and they move too quickly, they don't read what you've written carefully enough, they feel like it's their job to tell you what to, you know what I mean? There's a very slightly judgmental and exterior way of approaching the work, and they want lots of rewrites. And, I say this kind of with affection for them, even, because they pay you for the privilege to do what they're doing, and they've paid me enough for me to send my kids to college, and I'm really grateful for that. But the fact is, it can get to feel sort of abusive because they want draft, and they're and sometimes they're slightly hysterical and they're not paying attention, and then the person inside me who does the writing gets to a point where she's like, I'm sorry, I won't do that anymore.
How do you maintain your sanity through all of this?
I think the split self thing is actually working for me.
Really tough worlds that you navigate in.
Yes, but I have a really nice husband, and beautiful kids who are great. I mean, it's very much a refuge to me when I go home. So you can go home at the end of the day and kind of leave it all behind for a bit. Well, it's like anything. Some days I'm more successful at that than other days. And so it's
people
ongoing.
People are always interested in, when they listen to writers about what their process is, and do you have an office that you go to every day? Do you write at home? How does that work?
I do write at home. I do have an office. Sometimes I don't want to write there because I don't know why. I like writing in the kitchen. I actually write a lot here in Dorset. I have a little house up here, and there's a really good office in that house. That's
Nice.
And we're right on a stream, and you can unroll the windows and hear the stream. And it's got a nice. It's kind of like this corner. The ceiling's a little lower. It's so sort of cozy, and I get a lot of work done up here.
So how much time do you spend in Dorset?
Probably 3 to 4 months a year. Yeah. I'm here for most of the summer and chunks of time in the fall and the winter. And in the spring, I have this little writers colony. So I come up for a week with a bunch of writers, and we all get a lot of work done in 1 week.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. How does that work? Are these friends of yours that you invite up? Or?
I work with the Dorset Theater Festival and with the Lark. It's a development theater in New York. And we come up, we invite usually seven writers. And because there's enough, because I have one of those pieces of property that's got like a history to it, and it ended up with a really lovely guest house that kind of, I didn't go looking for a house with a guest house, but now I have this extra guest house, and so we wanted to put it to use.
Nice. I wanted to ask you about you as a woman writing in a world that can be very tough on women.
Hostile, you say?
Perhaps hostile. Yes.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I've been through like years of it's been pretty bad, and just recently when they started running the numbers, it's been so challenging for people to even understand what was going on and how serious the double standard is. Sometimes when I watch whatever you think of her politics, when I watch the way people speak about Hillary Clinton and the way she's been attacked over the years, and lied about, where there's clearly a problem. And I do believe that, and my experience is that there is a terrible problem. And
how is it manifested?
Well, pretty much every place when I work in Hollywood, the numbers are just way off. Behind and it's that we're talking about like both in front of the camera and behind the camera, where there's just a vast. Women are kind of forced into a pretty serious minority position. And there was one point when, the old saying is that women have to be twice as good for twice as long. And my experience is you have to be like 10 times as good, and then they resent you for it. And there was one point when I finally said to my husband, it's way worse than anybody actually thinks it is. That there are truly excellent women writers and producers and directors who who are really struggling to get taken seriously and get work, and who are doing beautiful work. And then the job, the sort of the bigger jobs go to guys who are like cokeheads. Do you know what I mean? It's not like this guy is not quite as good as this woman. It's more like this really excellent woman is kind of kicked to the curb, while this guy who's a cokehead and can't write gets like huge deals at ABC. You know what I mean? You're like, wow, this is dysfunctional. And I think it speaks to how crazy the storytelling and the culture gets. At one point I was working on a cop show, and I actually finally said to somebody, you guys, people don't go to strip clubs all the time. This sort of like every other week we were having scenes in a strip club. And, at some point you go, yes, we understand that all the guys like to go shoot in strip clubs and see but you go, guys, this is, so to some degree, there's it distorts storytelling, and also because the I mean, you can see it in the movies and the television and everything that kind of gets produced. It's
That may
got
be
a
why I
very
don't
narrow
watch television.
Yeah, it's got a very narrow understanding of what people want to see. It's very, very narrow, and it's very male centric. It's sort of demeaning to women. It's there was one point several years ago where I went, if I see another show about a serial killer who's killing like dozens of women, I'm just going to tear my hair out. This is like a distortion of culture, and I think that comes out of that like its environment.
Well, and that speaks to what is being stressed in our culture, and
They're creating it.
That's
I'm telling you, they're creating it.
and that's very frightening, actually, because
I thought so.
that's what our kids are
Yeah.
being shown, and that's what they're growing up with.
Yes, I mean, I have worked on shows that aren't like that, and it's enormously, like, I worked with David Korean and Marta Kaufman, who on a show a long time ago, it was called Dream On, it was for HBO, and they later went on to create Friends, and that was a really healthy environment. I mean, and it was very, the writer's room was sort of half women, half men. It was very lively and creative, and we had a lot of fun, and we got a lot of work done, and they were great bosses, and so it's one of those situations where you go, it's unnecessary for like the poor power politics to distort things to the degree. No one's making money off this. This is not an accurate business model. And that's the thing that so many women I know out in Hollywood I go back and forth. I am fascinated by film and television. I think that both of them are capable of creating beautiful. I've done really good work in both forms that I'm proud of, but the politics don't have to be that bad. And I think that's really, especially the past couple of years, where women have become much more vocal about, hey, this is all off. This amounts to discrimination. This is, and this is not good storytelling. And we could all make more money if we had a little more common sense, and the business could settle down a bit. You'd think that there's a lot of resistance to that, and that's disheartening. But I do think that we're maybe at a moment where there's a sea change happening.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you see it shifting a bit? I mean, because...
Well, I don't know. I just finished a movie with Angelica Houston, who is truly like everything you would hope and imagine she is. She's wise and fierce and funny, and she carries her, she's got enormous... her life energy. Like, she's had a crazy interesting career, and she's John Huston's daughter, and she's so talented and charismatic and compelling, and she feels, and she's been facing this for quite a while, and she feels like she's a little cynical about it at this point. She says, yeah, every 10 years the people get up in arms about it, and then they make a lot of noise, and then it goes away. And I hope that that's not true, but I think she knows more than me, so it might be true.
So you direct film, you write TV programs, you are a playwright, you write novels. Does one outshine the other in terms of what you like to do?
That's such a good question. I ask myself that question. I kind of ponder it. Right now, I have to say, I'm more fascinated by, this movie I just made is an independent feature, and I really loved working on my novel, because both of those things are, I think that's where I'm going.
Film and novels.
Film and novels. They're much more weirdly. I thought, this is so strange. Why is a novel like a film in a way that television is like theater? I don't. I'm like, why would that be? But I think for me, it's the having creative control over it, and creating a story, being a storyteller, is a big job, and there's a lot of nuance and demands. It's great demands in terms of how honest you're going to be, how funny it is, how human it is, what do you know, where is the narrative going. I mean, it's complicated, you know, and I began to find it more and more draining to have to deal with the politics surrounding the storytelling in those and theater and in television. And that's not to say I really, you know, I'm interested in television because of the serial nature of it. I think that's so fantastic. But and I love theater for. I mean, I am a playwright. That's sort of at the essence what I am, you know. But
you refer to yourself as a storyteller, and that can take so many different forms. Did you always know that you were a storyteller?
I did always know I was a storyteller. When I was very young, I was sure I was a writer. Like when I was 6, you know, my mother thought I was insane, but my aunt, who was her twin sister, like took it very seriously from the jump, you know. So you know, I think it is true that you do need to have someone going, it's all right, you know, you can do that. Although, you know, it took a while. It's not something that people take very seriously somehow. When a young person says, I'm going to be a writer, or maybe they do more than they did at my house. But my aunt did. And I think I did. I thought I would be writing fiction when I was very young, and I was writing fiction. And then when I was in high school, I became enamored of the theater, as so many people do in high school. And I was acting.
Did you act?
I was acting a lot. And then at some point, so those two interests sort of folded together, and I started writing plays. Yeah.
Well, that's great. And we only have a couple of minutes left, but. I understand you got a graduate degree in Victorian literature. Is that
yes? I have a PhD
in Victorian literature. Fabulous. And did you go right from college or did you take a break?
I went to Brandeis University for graduate school, and I was working on my PhD there, and at some point, and I had also at the same time, I went to Brandeis for English, and then at the same time I thought, yeah, you're a playwright, stop kidding around. I was a little bit of a coward. I didn't, you know, I kept thinking, I'll study it, you know, and then I thought, you coward? So then I went and transferred to the theater department and got an MFA in playwriting. And then I had already done so much work on the PhD and also I thought it would be, I wasn't ready to like dive into the world yet. So I finished my PhD, and I was learning a lot too. And I'm really grateful that I did that. But I've never like been a university professor in an English department. That was sort of clear to me that was actually not the path that my life would take.
Well, this has been wonderful. It's gone so quickly. I just want to remind everyone to come and see Theresa Rebeck's play at the Dorset Festival this summer.
It's very funny.
It's very funny. That'll be great. I can't wait. July 28th to August 13th. You can call the box office and reserve your tickets. And then on Friday, July 8th at 7 o'clock, Theresa will be back here, talking about her new book. And I'm glad about you. We're so delighted you were here this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you.